Coming up, truth-checking the debates. The candidates for governor and U.S. Senate in Kansas share the stage for the very first time this week. We bring you the most important exchanges and help you separate out the fact from the fiction. Plus, does Missouri Governor Jay Nixon have any friends left in Jefferson City as lawmakers overturn more than 50 of his vetoes? And while we concentrate on politics on this program, for many, the biggest news story of the week, the opening of a store selling Swedish meatballs and easy assembly furniture. Too much hype or just right? Welcome everyone, it's debate night here on KCPT. Immediately following Week in Review this Friday night, we bring you what will be one of the only televised debates between Kansas Governor Sam Brownback and his Democratic opponent Paul Davis from the Kansas State Fair this week. And then later at 9, we take you to Roberts versus Orman, the race for the United States Senate in Kansas. If you're watching one of our rebroadcasts of Week in Review, do not despair that you've missed out, because we're going to bring you highlights from both debates and truth check the candidates' claims this half hour, working feverishly behind the scenes to track those facts for you. From Topeka, Washburn University political scientist Bob Beatty is with us, Kansas City Star political reporter Dave Helling, and UMKC journalism professor, star political columnist, and the host of Up to Date on KCUR-FM, Steve Kraske. We begin with the governor's debate.
We have a clear choice in this election about whether we're going to restore the cuts to our public schools and get our state moving again, or whether we're going to hit the accelerator on a failed economic experiment.
He left a fiscal train wreck in the state of Kansas, and he's the Democrat leader then. He's the Nancy Pelosi of Kansas. That's it.
Governor, this is a critical issue for our state.
Let's see here if the bill gets to my desk.
I will veto a bill that repeals our RPS. I will stand up for the wind industry in our state. So if you believe that your governor shouldn't turn our state into an ideological laboratory, I ask for your support.
Now, Jeff Collier and I want two things. We want to make this state the best place in America to raise a family and grow a small business. And we're a long ways along our path of being able to do that. And we're going to keep pushing that dream.
All righty, this is a montage of different little sections of that debate. But first of all, the overall impression, this was Paul Davis's first moment in the sun with Sam Brownback, sharing the stage together. How did he come across then? First of all, Paul Davis, you know, most of us have not seen him in this section like this before. We've seen Sam Brownback many times before. He's done it, including on the national stage when he ran for president, Bob Beatty.
Well, that's right. You know, Paul Davis, most polls are still showing that up to 20–30% of likely voters aren't really sure who he is. They know he's the Democratic nominee. So this was his coming out party, very much like the TV ads he's now running. He's run, well, 2 ads, but really only 1 because the first one got pulled. And I think people will be surprised that he did pretty well in the debates, and he's looking pretty good or accomplished in his TV ads. So really it was important for Davis to show who he is. You have to keep in mind that this state fair debate, it looks great on television, but it's not a TV debate per se, and that it's not prime time on television. What it really is it's going to be used by the candidates for TV ads because you have that crowd there. So in that sense, both Sam Brownback and Paul Davis got some really good sound bites.
Well, you were there, Dave. Right. What did you think of Paul Davis's performance?
Well, I thought he did very well. I wrote this later. The general consensus is that it was a tie in terms of substance and style for both candidates. In a situation like that, a tie goes to the challenger, in my view, largely because Paul Davis's bar at this point is to prove to the voters of Kansas that he is a credible alternative, that he could be governor, that he knows the facts, doesn't panic, can stand toe-to-toe with the incumbent and debate him or her on the facts. He did all of that. So I think he solidified his position as at least tied with Sam Brownback going toward election day.
Steve.
Nick, this was a great debate. I can't recommend it to your viewers enough. To spend 20 minutes, half an hour watching this debate, you'll get a very clear sense very quickly where each of these two candidates is coming from, as entertaining as and informative of a debate as I've covered in a long time.
Well, one of those big issues in that first debate was education.
I'm a moderate, a common sense leader, an independent thinker. I'm also the son of 2 teachers and the parent of a soon-to-be kindergartner. And that's why the issue of public education is personal to me. That's why I've been a 12-year champion for our public schools in the legislature. That's why I oppose Governor Brownback's single largest cut to public school funding in state history. That's why I will make restoring those cuts my very top priority as governor. And that's why I'm supported by over 100 current and former Republican elected officials.
Now, everything you've heard from Representative Davis is wrong, I'm sorry to say. Number one, there are more Kansans working now than ever in the history of the state. Number two, we've put more money in education than ever in the history of the state. And number three, and this is a big one, number three is a big one, I support our rural schools. I'm opposed to forced consolidation of our rural schools. Now, my opponent, unfortunately, doesn't share my support for our rural schools. His top education advisor, John Brattle, is for forced consolidation. He said this about our rural schools. Listen to this: consolidation is inevitable. Quote, and the sooner they realize that, the better off they will be. I say no. No forced consolidation of rural schools.
You know, Governor Brownback is going to try very hard to rewrite his record on education, but he simply has never made education a priority. When he was in the U.S. Senate, he voted against Head Start repeatedly. He voted against after-school programs, voted against funding for new teachers, and then in his first year in office, he implemented the largest single cut to public school funding in state history, and he called it a victory. He's cut early childhood education. He's cut higher education. We need a governor who is going to make restoring the cuts that Governor Brownback made to our public schools the very top priority, and that is exactly what I will do as governor.
I wish Paul Davis would have voted for some of the money we put into education. He's voted against putting money into education every chance he's can.
All righty, then let's do some truth checking of that. I mean, has Paul Davis, if he's supportive of public education, why, if Sam Brownback is correct there, did he vote against putting money into public education, Bob Beattie?
Well, you know, first of all, Sam Brownback is trying to get the education issue back because he's been on the defensive since the spring, literally with teachers protesting him when he's appeared at public events. And so this is a big issue for moderate Republicans, of course. Now, the key here is the $129 million that the court ordered that we put back into schools. And in that bill was a provision to cut teacher tenure or due process. And this is really the poison pill for that bill. So Paul Davis voted against it. Sam Brownback signed it into law. So they're both going to emphasize different aspects of that bill. And of course, this is very common in politics to have a bill that has something you don't like in it.
Okay, so that's the distinction there. How about on the consolidation issue? That is, you know, it's like the word cancer for many people in the education community. Nobody wants to see consolidation of schools, particularly if you're in the rural part of the state. Does Paul Davis want to consolidate schools?
He says he does not, and any candidate for statewide office in Kansas, Nick, has to be against it, at least politically speaking, because, as you say, it is a poison pill for so many folks in rural Kansas who recognize that they need their local schools to survive, to keep their towns, small towns, thriving around the state. That dog simply won't hunt for any candidate in Kansas.
But we also have the governor saying he's actually putting more money in education, Dave Helling, and yet we have Paul Davis saying in that section there that we've seen the largest cuts in education that we've ever seen.
And of course, accounting is always important in politics, and so when money is added and taken out and how much is put in and taken out is always an issue. There was a dramatic reduction in the base state aid per pupil in the early years of the Brownback administration. Now, Sam Brownback says that's because the federal stimulus, which helped all states keep per pupil spending up high, was able to maintain the level in Kansas until that went away. When the stimulus went away, he argues, then the Kansas base state aid had to drop, and he's tried to build it back up. He's also argued, has Brownback, that state education spending has increased because he's contributed more to teacher pensions, which is another argument that the actual overall spending for schools has gone up. But Davis makes an important point, that the actual amount of money going per student in the state of Kansas has dropped dramatically and still has not risen to the level it was before Brownback took office.
Okay, well, the state of the Kansas economy was a big dividing line between the two candidates at the state fair debate this week, also in Hutchinson.
the prior administration that Paul Davis had voted for and helped with left us $876.05 in the bank account and a projected deficit of $1.5 billion over the next 16, 18 months. And we fixed it. We ended this fiscal year with $434 million cash on hand. $434 million. And what we are doing, we are growing, we are hitting our budget numbers, and we're going to put those budgets together, and we're going to be in a great shape. Now, my opponent for a long time has just been saying, look, the sky is falling, the sky is falling. The sky fell while he ran the place. Our budget was in a catastrophe, and our KPERS system was in the bankruptcy zone, and it now isn't. We're going to continue to perform and perform well in having a good, solid budget and investing in K-12 education record amounts of money like we have been.
You know, Governor Brownback is just sticking his head in the sand on this issue. Governor, your $876 number has been disproved over and over again, and you need to stop saying that. There was over $230 million in the bank when you took office, and you know it. We are in this situation, make no doubt about it. We are in this situation of debt down the road because of the governor's economic experiment. $1.3 billion over the next 5 years. That is jeopardizing the quality of education for an entire generation of Kansas kids, including my daughter. And I'm not going to stand for it. We've got to do something about it.
Yes, Paul Davis has proposed to do something about it. It's to raise income taxes on the lowest income people in the state of Kansas. He is proposing to raise 17% income tax on people making $15,000. Why are the people making $15,000? Why are they even paying income taxes in the first place? We should be allowing them to earn money that they can keep and that they can use in their own lives. And here's a fundamental difference. He thinks the government spends your money better than you do. I think you spend your money better than the government spends it.
Alrighty, let's truth check. A lot to work on there. I mean, is Paul Davis going to raise the taxes of the most impoverished members of the state of Kansas, Dave Helling?
Paul Davis has talked about freezing the tax cuts that are still in the pipeline. A lot of people don't know this, Nick, but the Brownback tax cuts have not all been implemented yet. There are further reductions. Brownback argues that because that freeze would not allocate further cuts to lower income Kansans, that in effect it means a tax cut. That's an old argument in politics, whether an unenacted tax reduction is actually a tax increase or not. Voters can decide that issue. There were a lot of other things in that little exchange that need real clarification. First of all, Paul Davis never ran the place. And second, the idea that Kansas had $876.
He was the House Minority Leader,
right,
though.
Right, he's a Democrat. Okay. Democrats don't run Kansas, although there was a Democratic governor. And the balance figures that Sam Brownback talks about are in large part because Kansans raised sales taxes before he took office. Sales taxes hurt the poor. So Sam Brownback, it seems to me, was really off the beam on facts in some of that.
Okay,
exchange.
there was another thing mentioned there, Bob Beatty, and that was by Paul Davis. You know, we're going to be $1 billion in debt in 5 years because of Sam Brownback's tax policies. I mean, is that a foul ball? Where's he getting his figures from? I mean, or is there some truth to that?
Well, that's the Legislative Research Division is projecting out to in the next 4 or 5 years, and they came up with $1.4 billion. Now, Governor Brownback argues, well, no, you're not taking into account the multiplier effect of these tax cuts will bring in all the businesses. Of course, that's the theory of supply side economics, whereas the Legislative Research Division is saying, well, let's be conservative, and we're not going to be bringing in as much money because of these massive tax cuts. So, yeah, I mean, it's certainly a viable projection.
Steve.
You know, for Governor Brownback to continue to repeat that $876 figure that's in the bank it may come back to haunt him because Paul Davis is right in that exchange, Nick. Paul Davis can point to newspaper article after newspaper article that's debunked that number roundly. And for Brownback to continue saying that really does sort of cast a shadow over his other claims in this debate.
I should also point out in this race there's a Libertarian Party candidate. Yes, Dave.
He was there. Keenum Bear is running for governor as a Libertarian. He was not a part of the debate because he didn't meet the threshold that was set by the debate organizers, but he did have some comments about the proceedings as they went on.
Well, also debating at the State Fair for the very first time in this campaign, Kansas United States Senator Pat Roberts and Independent Party candidate Greg Orman.
I just want to know when you're going to take a stand and tell us what party you're going to caucus with. Are you going to be a Republican one day and a Democrat the next, and the Democrat one day and a Republican? Where are you going to be? Come on.
Time, Senator. Time.
I realize it's sometimes difficult to know what to think about a nonpartisan candidate. My opponent would like you to believe I'm a liberal, masquerading as an independent, while some Democrats are starting to call me a conservative. I guess they can't even agree on that. What I am is a fiscally responsible businessman who will work hard to go to Washington and solve problems, not play party politics.
My opponent wants you to believe he's an independent. He is not. He is a liberal Democrat by philosophy. He has given thousands of dollars to Barack Obama, Hillary Clinton, and listen to this, Harry Reid.
Bob Beatty, I mean, this again, most people have no clue who Greg Orman is. This is the first time a lot of people have been able to see him beyond a 30-second TV ad. How did he do in this?
Well, first of all, actually, quite a few people have seen him, and let me point out that whether it's by luck or grand design, what happened to Greg Orman this summer was very, very important to him. While Milton Wolfe and Pat Roberts were battling out and not talking about the issues all summer long in those TV ads, people were watching Greg Orman appear in an ad that showed the two sides doing a tug-of-war, and Greg Orman saying, hey, you getting sick of this? And he benefited from the Wolfe-Roberts race. And so actually people have a sense of him. And the strangest thing about this debate, Nick, is that Pat Roberts' argument for electing him, Pat Roberts, is partisanship. So we see what he's arguing for, but it's very easy for Greg Orman to respond to that over and over and over. See what I mean? So this was an important debate for Greg Orman because if he made a big, big mistake, it might have really sabotaged his whole campaign.
Did he make any big mistakes,
No
Steve?
big mistakes, but he really sort of failed to distinguish himself in some ways from Pat Roberts. And I thought Pat Roberts was especially effective in this debate at really raising this question, Nick, of who is Greg Orman? He has a new 60-second TV spot, just started today, raising that question. That's really the big issue in this campaign for voters, to try to understand who is Greg Orman, can they trust him with their vote in the U.S. Senate?
Somebody not on the stage was Chad Taylor, the Democratic candidate. Can we assume from that then that he did successfully remove his name from the ballot?
Oh, no. We'll be back talking about that on this show going forward. Taylor, for now, is still on the ballot. It's in the Kansas Supreme Court. We'll see what happens.
Now, one of the big issues that has plagued Roberts even before the primary has been how much time he actually lives in Kansas, and his residency was a sore point of contention at this first debate.
I know more about Kansas than anybody else on this stage.
Well, I suspect, Senator, I've been to Dodge City more this year than you have.
How many times?
And I've been there 4 times this year. I've been there 4.
Well, I've been about 7, so you're wrong on that.
Okay. Well,
thank you.
I'll look for the camera roll on that. And I probably lived more of my adult years in Kansas than you have. But what I will say, to be perfectly candid, is I don't think it matters. I don't think it matters where someone lives. I think it matters how they vote. And when it comes to voting for Kansas and standing up for Kansas values, Senator Roberts has taken a sharp turn to the right. He voted against the Farm Bill. He voted against veterans' benefits. He voted against funding for NBAth. And ultimately, maybe the most egregious thing is when the VA reform bill came up, he didn't even bother to vote on it. And I think that's an affront to all Kansas veterans.
I brought the Big Red One back to Fort Riley. I led the fight to ensure that the world's biggest tanker refueling fleet will be at McConnell. I'm responsible for the Lewis and Clark Center being based at Fort Leavenworth. That's the finest military university in the world. I am the proud father of NBAF in Manhattan. Real jobs, real growth. It will transform our economy. and I protected and improved crop insurance for Kansas farmers. Here's a classic example. He doesn't know the Farm Bill.
Alrighty. Now, is Roberts the father of what's called NBAF? That's the National Bio and Agro Defense Facility being built in Manhattan, Bob Beatty.
Well, yes, he's been all over NBAF. He's been fighting for it for a long time. But then he voted against the bill that would bring $400 million for it. So he wants it both ways, of course, shockingly in politics. He wants credit for all that he's done for NBAF, but then politically he was able to not vote for it when he knew it would pass. And if Orman's able to articulate that, that's a strike against him.
Steve.
Yeah, I thought that's exactly right. And I thought for Senator Roberts to stand up and say that, hey, I've been to Dodge City, my hometown, more times than you have, Greg Orman. I've been there 7 times to your 4. That might sound like a higher number, and it is, but to say you've been to your home just 7 times this year, we are in September here, Nick, 7 times doesn't strike me a lot, and it really does add fuel to that question of how much is Pat Roberts, is he truly a Kansan or is he not?
As people watch the entire debate, as they will see tonight on KCPT, that debate coming up at 9, there wasn't a lot of specificity in a lot of the answers, though, that Greg Orman provided.
Well, he has a very difficult and fascinating challenge, Nick, and you saw some of that in that exchange. You'll see it in the debate tonight. Greg Orman's entire argument is that, in essence, I am not them. You know, I'm an independent, I'm post-partisan, I don't get down in the mud, I will elevate our debate, we'll solve problems. So he has to decide when Pat Roberts gets in his grill, like he did at the debate, like he will now do on television, how to respond. If he responds in kind, if he's aggressive, if he's critical of Pat Roberts, he becomes them. His whole rationale for running is in question, he becomes just another partisan politician. On the other hand, if he doesn't respond, then you get the kind of thing that Steve has talked about, which it seems like he's neither fish nor fowl, doesn't really take firm stands on issues. He has to solve that riddle. At the same time, and I think Professor Beatty has pointed this out, the more aggressive Pat Roberts is, the more partisan he appears. And if the argument this year is, no, we don't want partisans, we want problem solvers, every time Pat Roberts throws red meat, it really reinforces what Greg Orman is saying. The geometry of this race is unique in the country this year and will be fascinating to watch.
And is that why also a lot of us got calls this week from the former presidential candidate and the governor of Massachusetts, Mitt Romney, to our homes asking us to support Pat Roberts? That was unusual for us to be getting those calls. That says that Pat Roberts is really feeling the heat.
Yeah, he's feeling a lot of heat, Nick. How could he not be, given the poll standings in this race right now? He's reaching out to folks like Mitt Romney to bail him out. He's feeling heat, and Dave's so right. How this race shakes out is one of the more fascinating experiments we've seen in politics.
Okay, 8 o'clock then this Friday night, you're going to be seeing the governor's debate. 9 o'clock, the U.S. Senate debate. We can't be a true week in review on this program without reporting on what happened on the other side of state line, where some people are asking, does Governor Jay Nixon have any friends left in the state capitol after lawmakers overturned more than 50 of his vetoes, with Democrats joining in on many of them? Getting national news was lawmakers' decision to overturn the governor's veto on a bill requiring women to wait 72 hours before having an abortion, plus a bill that now expands the open carrying of weapons, trains teachers to carry guns in their classrooms, and lowers the age to carry a concealed weapon to 19. Another bad week for Jay Nixon, Steve Kraske?
Oh, it was a really bad week, Nick. You know, he comes into this veto session on the heels of Ferguson and the crisis there. He comes in here, you know, he looks around, he wants to stave off a bunch of override attempts. He looked around this week, Nick, looking for friends in the General Assembly, and he didn't have any. Overridden on issue after issue. Democrats not coming to his defense at all. You know, any sense that this man could be a presidential candidate or even a cabinet member, I think those dreams have now been trashed. Very bad week for Jay Nixon.
Dave.
I think that's true. I think Ferguson is a key here. Whatever sort of moral authority Jay Nixon had in terms of sort of getting Democrats in line, particularly, and maybe peeling off a few Republicans at the legislature, was really erased by his perceived performance in Ferguson, for good or for ill. So he is really, truly a lame duck, Nick. I mean, that's what we saw this week, is the beginning of his lame duckedness, if you will, in the state capitol. And it's going to be a rough ride for the governor until his term is over.
Now, while we may want to talk about politics on this program, for many people, example, the biggest news story of the week was IKEA opening its doors in Merriam. Some Kansas City area customers had been camping outside the door for 2 days just for the chance to win a free sofa and some other giveaways. This video from Hale Center entrepreneurial reporter Bridget Bowden. This is first IKEA in Kansas or Missouri. Governor Sam Brownback was at the opening to celebrate the 300 jobs created. Would IKEA have come here without the positive tax climate the governor has created for businesses in the Sunflower State, Bob?
Sure, of course. And you know, he was putting down Mark Parkinson in that previous video, and Parkinson negotiated a number of deals bringing businesses and sports teams to Kansas. You know, that's what every governor should be doing. But sure, you take credit. Governor Brownback should be given credit because it happened under his watch. But what goes into these decisions is beyond the individual tax rates. I mean, it sounds unusual, but it's actually true. It's a complicated formula of where their customers are versus where their nearest store is.
This is a big deal, though, for Kansas City this week.
Oh, it's a really big deal, Nick. And given how much political rhetoric we've heard about likening candidates to Barack Obama and Harry Reid and Nancy Pelosi, I wouldn't be surprised if those guys showed up in the IKEA store this week,
All right,
too.
that is our Week in Review. Our thanks to Steve Kraske from The Star, the host of Up to Date on KCUR-FM, and Washburn University political scientist Bob Beatty. And our thanks to The Star's Dave Helling. I'm Nick Haynes. From all of us here at KCPT, thanks for spending part of your weekend with us.